remind again, like every week, this class is gonna be that Sechat Chalei Tzal and Sefer Tonal Chatufim and Dilin Nishmat Chal HaKadosh Gibor Hiladiner Shem Yikom Damav. And now we're going to add also for that Trump's vision or interpretation. These things we can't make them up. Can't make them up. It's history. So we are in the story of Yerubal Gideon. Remember Yerubal Gideon? A little background to remind everyone about what we saw previously, because obviously the story is connected. We're in the middle of the story of Gideon. Gideon, whose later name was changed to Yerubal, was a Shofet appointed before Am Yisrael did Tshuva. Am Yisrael is still embedded in idol worship. We saw that his first job was to start getting rid of the idols in his home village, where his father is the owner of the idol worshiping. So Gideon comes from a family of idol worshipers, and Hashem still chooses him amongst this. He's a nobody tribe. He's a katan in his family, and Hashem not important family, not important tribe, and he's still chosen to be the shofet of Am Yisrael and redeem them from the oppression. Remember that Midianim are doing, they're raiding their harvests, and not we're talking about marauders, tribal marauders, not coming and killing per se or attacking. They're just taking their livestock and going to the fields and destroying all the crops, forcing the Jews to hide their crops and grow their crops in weird places, causing also hunger, obviously. And that is what he's there to fight against. So after Gideon had his encounter with the Malach, that was last week, and the Malach ended up, Malach said it can mean either, it can be either in a vision, or it can be a messenger, it can be a Navi, or an angel, and he knows he was chosen. Nothing happens. Okay, he's chosen. He disappears, and God tells him, "Don't worry, you're not going to die." And he chosen to God heard your cry, and he's here to save you. And he does all he does in name change to Yerubal. So then we're in Perek Vav, Pasuk Lamed Gimel. So another big raiding party of the Midianites are coming. They're taking also Amalek is with them, Bnei Kedem, all the nomad farmers, nomad clans. They get together and they bring all their livestock throughout the rampage, throughout the countryside, the harvest and the field. And Ruach Adonai lavsha Gideon ve'etka b'shafar ve'ezek Eliezer acharav. He blows the shofar. Ruach Hashem encompassing him, wearing Ruach Hashem is a phrase that appears a lot throughout the Tanakh. We're going to see it with Gideon, we see it with Shimshon, we see it with David, we're going to see it with Shaul, that when you get the strength from God, like Lech b'chucha zev v'ashad b'Yisrael, right? There's something that this Ruach Hashem lavshad Gideon, and he knows what to do. He's inspired. He knows what he's supposed to do. There's moments where a leader gets this inspiration. I know what I have to do, and he blows the shofar for war and calls, and the family of Abiezer, which was a big family clan, they follow his lead, and they gather and they make a recruitment operation. They send messengers to all Shevet Menashe, and Shevet Menashe comes to their aid. And he says to Zvulun, Asher Zvulun, and they come, and Naphtali, and they come. All these are the northern tribes. You call these northern tribes, and they all show up, which is amazing. We saw with Dvorah, they called, and some did not answer the call. He doesn't call all the tribes, because this is trouble in the north, where he said he calls for the tribe, help of the tribes in the north, and they show up to help. Then again, he was inspired. He saw the war coming. He felt this inspiration. Now he wants verification that he's going to be successful. Usually, the process appears in the Mishnah Sanhedrin. We see it. We're going to see it a lot throughout the Tanakh. Before you go to war, you're supposed to ask the Urim Tumim, will I win or not? It's a good idea or not. That was a known thing. Gideon is not a Kohen, so instead of asking Urim Tumim, he asked for a sign from God. I want a sign from God that I'll be victorious or not. And he makes up the sign. הנה אנוכי מציג גזרת עצר בגורן, נמתה לי על הגזרה לבדה והכל הארץ חורב, וידעתי בידי ישראל כאשר דיברת. So the sign was to make sure that God, we're going to win this war. He's not asking the Churban Tumim. He wants a sign from God, takes a piece of tzemer, puts it in the Goren outside. It says tomorrow morning, if everything is dry and the tzemer is wet, that's a sign that we're going to be successful in this war. We're going to win the war. And the next morning, we're going to get to that in a second. The next morning, it's soaking wet. He can fill a cup full of dew out of the tzemer. But Gideon turns to God and says, God, don't be angry with me. Quoting Avraham Avinu, right? Don't be angry. I want to ask again, because Avraham Avinu also asks again, if they're 50, if they're 45, if they're 35. So I don't want God to get angry. I want to ask another request, another test. Again, God is not talking. There's no prophecy. He just in the prayer says, I want this sign from God. Who else asked for signs from God in the Tanakh? Moshe asked asked for signs from God, but he asked a conversation with God. But who asked for signs from God? He tells God, give me a sign, not during prophecy. You have with Eliezer, Eved Avraham, that says, I want a sign from God that this is the right wife. He makes up a sign. And God. We'll get that in a sec. Yonatan also is going to ask for a sign. Him and his Mesekim before they attack Musaf Lishtima wants to know if he's going to win or not. He makes up a sign and says, God, if they tell me this, that means this. If they tell me that, it means that. The Gemara's whole discussion, can you make up signs from God? Is it permitted or not? There's a machlok in the Gemara. It's machlok Shulchan Aruch Rema. Rambam arrived at it. The Rambam says that it is forbidden. And it's ilot nachshum, right? You can't make up signs and act according to them. If God tells you a sign, that's one thing. God tells, but you're not supposed to ask for signs. The Ravid gets very angry because the Rambam is calling Eliezer a sinner, and the Talmud did it was a sin. Rambam says, yeah. But the Ravid says, no, obviously these tzaddikim, they knew what they were doing. And the Ravid said, it's permitted to do such a test to God. Ask for a sign, what to do, if you ask it in advance. Meaning, you can't say, oh, that cat walk in front of me, that means 7 years bad luck, I shouldn't go to work. But if before you leave, you say, God, if you don't want me to go to work, send the black cat as soon as they cross the street, and a black cat crosses, that was the question. That's what you asked in advance from God. And God, speak to me through black cat. It's fine. If you made that sign in advance, then a black cat might mean something. But you can't just, in retrospect, interpret reality. Oh, this means something. No, it only means something if you made this deal with God. That's what happened. Oh, prophet. Those are prophets. They're talking to God. That's a different. He's not a prophet. He's just like makes up the sign. God, the answer. Anyway, he does one sign, then asks for another sign. The second sign, opposite. Instead of I want this time everything to be wet and only the wool to be dry. And sure enough, that is what happens the next morning. Why does he have a double sign? Big argument among the commentaries. Some say just to make sure, as a scientist, you want to double check. Others say no. He thought there's a flaw in the first test because Tzemer absorbs water, and he woke up in the morning. Wait a minute, it could be everything's dry because this absorbed all the liquid, and I came to the dew comes in early in the morning, and it might have dried out, and this is dope. He noticed a bad experiment, and even though it was a siphel full of water, which is a not normal amount, he said, yeah, probably, but it might have been a bad experiment, and therefore he thinks of a better experiment, which is against the laws of nature. Having that wet and everything dry, it doesn't necessarily break any laws of nature. The other way around, the tzemer is supposed to absorb water, that's dry, and everything else is liquid. That is that's against the laws of nature, siman. Now that could mean also symbolic, meaning will we win Kederech HaTeva, right? And God says, yes. Okay, will we win? Also, you help us, Shelo Kederech HaTeva? And God says, yes. So there's two different questions here. Am I supposed to win this natural? God says, yes. Okay, how unnatural? Like it's going to be like a miracle? And God says, yes. And that's important because later on, we're going to see that God is going to say, oh, no, 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 this is going to be a miraculous. This is not going to be a dechateva kind of victory. I don't want this to be a dechateva. I don't want this to be the semer is wet and everything's kind of dry kind of miracle. This is going to be the semer is dry and everything's wet. It might be some symbolism. I saw someone wrote an article trying to say there's some more spiritual symbolism that connects to what the situation of Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael, like everyone's in idol worshiping. God says, "Oh yeah, I'll help you out in the schmutz." Like while we're still in the schmutz, God's going to help. God's going to do that separation. Look at us when we're surrounded in schmutz, and the answer is yes. And therefore, He wants to show the God that you separate everything around us is. But here, God is going to be good here. There's going to be the wool is going to be wet. Everything else is dry, and vice versa. God can do that havdalah, like we have in Mitzrayim. There's mavdil ben Mitzri. A lot of them, a lot of them. There's nuances. These are Jews that they're doing tshuva. They started the process. Is God into doing this havdalot, and that's what the symbolic meaning of the. Some say it's about his own status. I am so not important. How can God really me? God, I want to show that you're really choosing me. So choose the tzemer amongst the everything around. Those are different directions. But again, I think the simplest answer is connecting to the Kederech HaTeva or Kelo Kederech HaTeva. Those are two questions. Are you with me? And he says, yes. That was his question. Are you with me? Are you with me this much? He asked for a small miracle, and then he asked for a much bigger miracle. Therefore, what am I to be expecting from Hashem? What kind of help? Derech HaTeva or Shelo Kederech HaTeva? And the next war, and sure enough, they get to war, and tens of thousands of soldiers show up. All the tribes send their soldiers. And then God appears to Gideon, we're going to see that in a dream, and tells him there are too many soldiers. If you too many soldiers, too many soldiers, the people are going to see, oh, it's Derech HaTeva. They're going to say, oh, we did this. This is Derech HaTeva. And therefore, I want to be a smaller army, so be a victory Shelo Kederech HaTeva. So that's exactly what the two miracles. He doesn't want it. And therefore, first he sends home all the Yareh Berach HaLevav. Everyone who is afraid. Usually we send home from Yareh Berach HaLevav in a Milchemet Reshut. But here, it's a Milchemet Mitzvah, Atzalat Yisrael Ne'atzar. In any event, God says, we're going to deviate for the regular laws, allow anyone who is afraid to go home, and 22,000 soldiers come home, and only 10,000 soldiers remain. God tells them there are still too many soldiers here. Still not not big enough miracle. Send them to the water, and I'll choose them there. And water, so that maybe that's the trick. Hinting at water is going to help you find out the miracle Shelo Kederech HaTeva. And tell them, send them to drink from the water and break them into two groups. But this is a great experiment. Two groups where nobody knows what group means what. There's the group is based on how they drink from the water. People who go on their knees and drink, and people who drink like a dog. They lick from the water, their tongue, like a dog drinks. Those are the two groups. 300 soldiers drink like a dog. Everyone else drinks like normal human beings supposed to drink. No one's drinks like a dog. And he says, great, the 300 soldiers, they're the remaining army. That's all I need to defeat the enemy. Everyone else go home. So from 32,000 soldiers, Kederech HaTeva miracle, no, we're going to do the Gizat Semer, the Kelo Kederech HaTeva Semer, that everyone's going to be wet and it's going to be dry. That's what we're going to do. 300 soldiers. What's with this test? Now, this is already God choosing this. It's not Gideon God says, I want, this is my test. How do you drink? Um, some commentaries say, just weird, right? Weird, but they're looking for meaning. Many commentaries say it has to do with idol worshiping, right? If you have to find the idol worshiping,
being on the knees.
On your knees, whoever bowed down to the knees, that shows they're idol worshippers, and therefore, again, this works well with what we said last week. We're talking about a situation where this is a very unique situation. Am Yisrael didn't really do tshuva yet, complete tshuva. Usually we do tshuva and then God saves us. Here, God's saving us in the midst of it, in the beginning of a tshuva process, where Gideon has to destroy the statue of his father. So the soldiers that come there, most of them are idol worshippers. So says Hashimos commentaries, first of all, let's get rid of the idol worshippers. And many commentaries say that out of 32,000, remaining 300. And God says, I'm still going to save you. I'm still going to save you. But I'm not breaking the covenant, even though most of you are still idol worshippers. I'm going to look for that simmer, everything's wet, and you're the dry, fine. Everyone's sinning. Everyone's sinning, but there are those who aren't sinning. Everything's wet. Everyone does it. Everyone? Everything's wet? It's not everyone. People like say, oh, when it rains, everyone gets wet. But everyone's sinning. Everyone's doing idol worshiping. It's not true. That's not true. You can always be different. Summer can be wet when everyone's dry. It can be dry when everyone's wet. You can always be different. And all the excuses of, I think what's coming. This is kind of a statement. You don't. Is it possible? Like, what do you want to expect that we can be a small group that's not influenced by the idol worshippers? Yes, that's what God expects us. Everyone's worshiping idols. You don't worship idols. These guys, they're dry. 32,000 wet idol worshippers. They're dry. Look at They're going to win the war. Other explanations were said by drinking that way. Some said exact opposite. They said not opposite. They said that drinking, going on your knees. Oh, that drinking a dog is when you bring the water to your mouth. Not when you lie down and drink like a dog. It's when you bring the water to your mouth, and on your knees means they're the ones who bend down on the knees and drink like a dog. There's different. The commentators didn't like the fact that we took the people that are drinking in a weird way, so they wanted to say no. It means you drink in a weird way when you bring the water to your mouth. Then you drink like that. When there's a lot of water in the river, you can. In any event, we're going to go the direction that it's all about. God wants everyone's idol worshippers. There's 300 that aren't. We're going to win with them. Everything's wet. The dry. We're going to yes. That's how we're going to do the miracle. Okay. So he sends everyone home, and 300 soldiers are left. Now, he makes a big plan. There's a war plan, a very complicated war plan here. But right before that, the evening before the battle, God tells him, "Don't worry, you're going to win the war. But if you're afraid, then and you want another sign that you're going to win this war, then you can go down to the camp. You and your go with your nav, your weapon carrier, and you'll hear what the enemies are speaking, and then you'll know that another sign that you'll win this war." Now, here raises another question: why does he need another sign? That already had it. He already had a sign.
So
What?
He's not asking.
He's not asking for it. Now, because this is thing, he had a sign: will I win the war or not? He raised an army of 32,000. He sent most of them home. Now he's at 300. It's a war. He's scared. He's scared that are we worthy for this miracle of Shalok Kedechateva? He was ready. The Simanim raising the army, that was good enough for him. Yeah, we're going to win. 32,000 soldiers. That's an army. 300. He's not asking for it. But God says, if you want, I'll give you another sign. And Gideon wants another sign. So Gideon creeps up on the army. It's a giant army. The Tanakh doesn't bother, too much to count. Like locusts. And here's one person, one soldier telling his friend, I had a dream. And in my dream, I see this burnt loaf of bread. They used to make bread, pitot, Arab pitot, if you had them. The way you make them is really cool. It's probably how the Arab matzahs were made. You take dough and you cover it in coals. And then you shake off the coals and you have your cold pita. It was very common in the time of also the Beit Shani. Anyway, I see this loaf of bread made this way, spinning in our camp, and it hits a tent and flips it over. Okay, this is a weird dream. Now, the interpretation of the dream. This is what's more important. One friend interprets the dream to somebody else. Oh, I know what that dream is. That piece of loaf of bread that's flying around, that's the sword of Gideon ben Yoash, the Jewish general. And that means that he's going to defeat us and flip over our tents and destroy the entire camp. Now, people, the commentaries argue, is there any correlation between the dream and the interpretation? It says that yes, bread represents Gideon. We know he was working, they're farmers. Farmers make grain to make bread, and they're using their flax to eat all the grain before they can turn to bread. And if it turns to bread, and the bread has come, the bread makers have come for the revenge of the bread, because they're shepherds. The farmers, revenge of the farmers. But most modern commentaries want to say that that's just in the interpretation. I mean, you can interpret a dream a million different ways. If one soldier is interpreting the dream in that way, that's what he thinks is going to happen. I mean, you interpret dreams, you use your internal world. This soldier is afraid of Gideon attacking, and they heard about this giant. From their perspective, they heard there's an army of 32,000 soldiers. Now they didn't have to fight till now. There was no battles. They just came with the men and their flocks, and they raided. Now there's a real army out to meet them. These soldiers are afraid. That's the siman, the interpretation of the dream, not the dream itself. Then Gideon comes back and tells everyone, this is ours. He tells the people, God is with us, we are going to win. What does he do? Plan is 300 soldiers, breaks into 3 groups of 100 each, gives them all shofarot and kadim. How do you say a cut? Now, in the jugs, they have lit torches. The torches are in the jug. That it's night, so the smoke comes out, doesn't get extinguished, but you can't see the light. Right? The light is very dim. And they advance on the army of Midian from 3 directions, leaving one direction open. And then when he gives the sign, when they get the edge of the enemy's camp, Gideon blows the shofar. They do it in Rosh Hashemot Tichonah, the middle of the night, right? And the Gemara in Brachot tells exactly when that is. It's midnight, or middle of the night. And it's pitch black, and all of a sudden, blowing 100 shofar, 300 shofar are blown, and they break all their kadim. And then in 1 second, what did the army see? Torches, 300 torches, right at the edge of their camp. So that freaks. We're under attack. Everyone wakes up. We're being attacked. The enemy's at the gates. The enemy's already here. Not the enemy's coming. The enemy's already here. Now, when you have so much light at once, it's also blinding. You don't know how many people are actually there. So they're being attacked in the middle of the night when everyone's sleeping. There's so much light at one time, they can't really notice how many soldiers are there. And that causes havoc. And they start waking up, one attack, fighting each other, killing each other, because it's night, it's dark, you can't see where people are. There's someone coming at you. Different clans. There's Amaleki, there's Midiani, there's the Kasdim. There are different nations here, nationalities living together. People don't know each other, different tribes. People are killing whoever they meet. And the camps, destroying the campsite here, from the dream, the campsite, the tents really get run up, and they start retreating. So they're fighting throughout the night. They're retreating throughout the night. Meantime, messengers are sent throughout to Naphtali and Asher, and also Menashe. Now, Naphtali and Asher were already summoned to the battle, and they came, but they were sent home. Menashe wasn't summoned. Remember originally when he recruited the army? Is it where? He says to Asher, Zvulun, Naphtali. They all come. He didn't call Menashe. That's important. Doesn't call Menashe. But now he called people of Menashe as well, and they chase the Midianites. And then he sent messenger also to Har Ephraim, to Shevet Ephraim, to quickly cut him off before they're able to cross the bridges to the eastern side. Again, we also saw this with the bridges of when we were talking about Ehud ben Gira, when he killed Eglon Melech Moab. There he went an assassination mission on the eastern side of the Jordan, and the idea was to cut off the bridges for reinforcements can come and kill the Edomites that are trying to that now they're cut off. So these are invading nations that are coming from Jordan. They're coming. Jordan's a place where you raise a lot of sheep. You know that from Dan. They're coming with all the flocks, raiding and then coming back. They're not living here. That's where they're coming from. So he wants them to kill. So he wants Ephraim to come and cut off the bridges, meet them at the bridges. And the people of Ephraim answer, and they capture the bridges. A few bridges, Bet Baran, they are the two main bridges. And they catch two ministers of Midian, Orev and Ze'ev, and they kill them on the bridges trying to cross. And they cut off their heads and bring them as proof to Gideon. So tremendous victory. Eventually, he does use the army, but not for the original. But now you also understand why you need a smaller group. You can have 300 people creep up on an army. You can't have 3 groups of 100. You can not have 32,000 people creeping up. 32,000 people, no matter how you cut it, that makes noise. So the entire strategy is based on there being small numbers. But the victory eventually you need big numbers. But
Again, you could explain that.
so it seems Shelo Kedech HaTeva and becomes Dech HaTeva. That's beautiful. I mean, it has to look. It's going to look Shelo Kedech HaTeva. This was a Kedech HaTeva, but it looks like 300 people will be able to defeat it. And eventually, the answer is yes. Through B'Tachburot Atzem Milchama, 300 people. Their job was just to scare them, cause havoc, and then while they're in retreat, then we have the main forces join the battle.
What wasn't Devateva was a Chalom.
The Shalom.
Okay, force. It didn't happen. Along with the sign.
It's a sign. It was a sign.
Not the Chalom, the guy who was scared said.
Oh, the interpretation.
Why would he be scared for? It's a big army, they're coming.
No. So when we say Shelo Kedech HaTeva, that means obviously God intervened here, like the strategy, the fact that they were afraid. But we say Shelo Kedech HaTeva, that means that there's literal breaking of the laws of nature. So when you want to combine the two simanim, is it going to be Kedech HaTeva? The answer is yes. Is it going to be Shelo Kedech HaTeva? The answer is yes. How can both of them be the answer be yes? It's a Kedech HaTeva that in advance looks like Shelo Kedech HaTeva, meaning 300 are going to take on the army. Yeah, 300. 300, yes. That's Shelo Kedech HaTeva. Oh, in retrospect, oh yeah, we can explain that. So in advance, it looks Shelo Kedech HaTeva, but that's how you have both Kedech HaTeva and Shelo Kedech HaTeva, both it's wet and everything's dry and everything's wet at the same time. The answer to both of them is yes. That's that's the miracle here. Now inner politics kick in. And we don't, it's hard to understand this because we have the other problem. The Shevet Ephraim, the war is not over, but Shevet Ephraim, after cutting off the bridges and taking out uh, the head of Ze'ev and Orev, they go to Gideon, Gideon and say they're very upset. They're very upset for not being called. We were also oppressed by the Midianites. They were also our enemy. Why didn't you call us? What does it mean they didn't call us? You went to war without us. We're not Jewish. We're not part of this. We're not part of the now. It's very hard for us to understand um, this being in this attitude if you don't understand where Ephraim is located. You have a map here of where Ephraim, where this war is taking place. Like here's these are the northern tribes, right? Naphtali, Asher, like Naphtali above the Kinneret, and Asher, it's like Haifa is above Haifa, not Nerea, Yisachar is Emek Israel, Menashe is a bit southern than that, Megiddo, Bet Shan, and Ephraim is already Bet El, Shiloh, that's already much more southern. Now you have your southern kingdoms and your northern kingdoms, the Tzafon and the Darom. And this was definitely when they probably we see throughout Sefer Yoshua, we saw also the Sefer Shoftim that since there was no king per se, then people acted by areas, right? The northern wars, the southern wars, the wars of Jerusalem. You don't come and bring. But Dvorah, people came all the way from Binyamin, which was a big deal. That's an exception. Him not calling Ephraim to war, what did that mean? Why did he call Ephraim?
They were northern.
You're not northern. You're not northerner. We have our coalition. We have a northern coalition going on here that we have each other's backs, and that ends at Menashe. And Menashe wasn't called. Actually, Menashe, it wasn't even Menashe. Menashe wasn't called as well. Menashe was only also called in the retreat. If the army is running south, so he sends messenger to the southern tribes of Menashe and Ephraim to cut them off and help them defeat them. But they're not per se as part of the northern tribes. And that's insulting for Ephraim. Say, what? We're not part of the north? That means if we're in trouble, you're not going to come to help us out. Because everyone understands it works both ways, right? We didn't call you when we had troubles. We solved it ourselves. So don't you calling us when you have trouble. It works like that. When are you calling us? When you need us. When you need us, the enemy is retreating south towards the bridges, and you want us to cut off. Oh, now we're useful for you, but for when we weren't useful for just the coalition, they didn't call us. If you don't explain that, it's very hard to understand why someone's insulted. They're not called to fight and risk their life. But
why risk your people? Well, we didn't think we needed you. Something unexpected happened. Now we need you, so we're gonna call you.
Meaning we didn't call you originally because it's not your issue. It's our issue. We're the northern tribes. Now, if you want to be part of if you're not part of the northern coalition, that means if you're in trouble, Ephraim, don't call us. Right? You call the nearby tribes. That's what exactly what Gideon's going to answer that, right? But and they're insulted, and this insult we have to remember it's going to get worse later on.
Yeah, I haven't. Sorry, I apologize, but Ephraim may be upset that they asked God not for the Mishkan, because the Mishkan is in Ephraim. It might be told me talking to God,
Interesting,
and not even come to ask us.
Wow, make it a religious thing. Anyway, Gideon's response is, "What are you complaining? You got the generals. You got the Sarim, right? Abiezer, my men, we were killing the Staglers and the people. You got the head guys. So you won the war. You got Sinwar. You're the guy that killed Sinwar, right? Should call us for the war. It's an important part of the war. Complaining about." So right, and he was able to calm him down. he was able to calm them down, right? And they weren't that angry with him anymore. So that is part one of the war. But they cut off them at Leben Ze'ev at the bridges. The problem was that there's more bridges, and Zevach and Tzalmunah are able to cross the bridges. And they're already on the eastern side of the Jordan, and now Gideon has to make a decision if to cross over, and he decides we're crossing over. It ends here. None of this retreat, regroup, and then come back again. No, it ends here, and he's going to take out the army Midian, they're kings, not they're only the generals. Zevach and Tzalmunah had guys there, and he goes Matkal kind of style, and he's going to cross over the Jordan. Again, that's what we learned many times. If you want to end the war, you can't just pray protection. You have to go in the offense, which means bring it to the enemy, like we did in Lebanon, like we did in Gaza, like our ancestors did in Zevach Tzalmunah. We're going to see B'ezrat Hashem next week the battle in Zevach Tzalmunah, and some very difficult stories that happened during that battle. B'ezrat Hashem next week. Later too.